Oh, hi. I just want to welcome people that are here attending the session. I'd love to know where you're zooming in from. I see we have Debbie, along with my TLC host and technical host.
Welcome, everyone.
I am zooming in from San Diego. The weather here is pretty nice. And I am a professor here at UAGC. I teach math, and I'd love to know if you are from UAGC as well. What's your role, or if you're from somewhere else where you're currently spending some of your work time and energies?
I'm Amy Johnson, and I am at UAGC. I'm the program chair for AAECE, and I live in the Fort Worth area.
Oh, excellent. I was in Houston not that long ago visiting a close friend of mine.
And I'm Linda. I'm zooming in from Phoenix, Arizona. I work in faculty payroll and compensation. I send out contracts and help with HR, data entry, time cards, all that exciting stuff. The
Oh,
back,
cool.
the behind the scenes.
Behind the scenes, but without those behind the scenes, none of this happens.
Right.
But thank you and welcome you both. I see Debbie is zooming in from Michigan. I have some relatives in Michigan, and you're a UAGC associate professor. What do you teach, Debbie? And as I ask questions, maybe we'll just all reply in the chat and we can read what people are saying. So the other thing I'd like to know is something that you do outside of work. Is there anything that you'd like to share that you do outside of work? For me, I really like hiking. I love going to art museums with my husband. In fact, when I was in Houston, me and my friend, I said, "Oh, would you take me to the art museum?" And she said yes. And then I also love to read. I read both things that you'd think of as like highbrow things, like I read Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, but I read sort of, regular plebeian things as well, sort of, for fun reading, a beach read. There's literally a book called Beach Read, and I have read it. Um, so Debbie is in nursing and in healthcare and loves to be on the water. Oh, on the water, it's so nice. Well, it's so nice to get to know you a little bit better, those attending the talk. And hi, Dan. I know Dan is signing in from Denver. Dan is another full-time faculty member here and teaches communications and also helps me out. One of the great things in one of my classes is a chat bot, and Dan did all the technical stuff for it. He hosts a great Teachnology monthly presentation, and I highly recommend it. Dan, we're sharing a little bit about instructor and role, but I shared yours already. And one thing you enjoy doing outside of work. Next Wednesday, smart. Yeah, so if you'd like to share something like that in the chat, that'd be great. And I will go ahead without delay and get started. So I have a question for each of you. Now that I've gotten to know you a little bit better, is there something that when you first started out doing it, you struggled? Now you're good at it, or at least okay. But when you first started it, you're like, oh, it was really hard. If you wouldn't mind sharing in the chat, just something that you struggled with, I would love to know about that. Our students often feel a little scared about certain subjects that they need to master in order to earn their degrees. And for me, I would say it was biology. I didn't do well in biology. At 16, I wasn't very interested in biology and didn't understand why you needed 7 names for a frog. All the frogs I'd seen were about the size of my hand. They hopped around. Frogs seemed good enough for me. But I actually failed a semester of biology in high school. Not my finest moment. Yes, research statistics, that can be very intimidating. Just the basics of statistics is something a lot of people know, but there are a lot of intricacies in that. It's a very specialized field. Ooh, doing one-on-one speech coaching. Yes, Dan also does a speech class here. Right, and that's really wonderful. So when you think about that progression from struggling to a solid foundation there, or from confused to confident, what was the role of support in bridging, making that bridge to where you are today in that field? Was it important to have support? Or did you just sort of be, oh, well, I guess one day I feel good about it? Very important. Thank you, Amy. I love your participation in this small session. So thank you so much. It was very important, and our students feel the same way. So when you're thinking about students going into math, think about that subject that you felt not very confident in at first, and it took something, including some support, for you to build that bridge and get confident in it. I see we have some new people. We have Marcia. I just want to welcome Marcia, and I'd love it if you would share in the chat where you're zooming in from. So we're going to learn a little bit about the live learning math expansion. Oh yeah, and in a sport it was important. Thank you so much, Linda. Oh, it's so nice to see you here in the Zoom. I work with Linda all the time. So we're going to learn about a few of these items. And in particular, we're going to focus on its impact on student belonging. This is the third grant that I've gotten around live learning mathematics, and this is called the Live Learning Mathematics Expansion. Oh, tuning in from AR, Arkansas. I've been to North Little Rock to the little 4-H center for a women's retreat more than one time, and it is beautiful there. So we started out in math doing live learning as a pilot. It wasn't just me, Dr. Mingjin Bao, and a number of people on our team were all doing pilots in different classes. So math was one of the classes. And this is how ours started out. We had more than one math class, and we picked 2 of those to co-sit for the one session that we had each week, which I ran. And I really could get in there into the nitty-gritty with students, a little like I got to know you all at the beginning of this session. Because I, as one of the 2 managing professors, I could literally go into the student's lab and I could see the last topic the student worked on. I could see the number of times they'd tried it. I could see the last thing the student had missed, and I could see what they wrote. I could see everything. Now, that didn't mean I'd say, hey, June, I see you're having trouble with linear equations, but I could say, maybe we'll start with the linear equations problem, and I'd put a picture of the problem with no student name. And that was a great thing because I really could personalize the live learning session. At first, it was almost just a Q&A. It was asynchronous office hours. The student, it was synchronous office hours, but online. So they had to come at a certain time because that's when I was there. But students could come and sort of ask whatever they wanted. But if the conversation got a little slow, I found ways to move it along, asking questions, sharing something of myself, and opening that door so that I can make that connection with the student. And thus I developed what I call the 3 C's of live learning, and all the math sessions are run this way. The first thing we do is we connect with the students, sort of like I did at the beginning of this session with all of you. Then once I made that connection, I was born in January. Oh, you're born in March. How cool is that? I like hiking. Oh, you like paddleboarding. Well, we both like being outdoors and looking for those commonalities. Then I would connect the material to the real world. And I'll show in a little bit how we do that in a real live learning session. Because not only do live learning sessions happen live, but if a student is deployed or has a really bad work schedule or family responsibilities and cannot attend live, there is an ADA compliant recorded alternative session. And I'm going to share a little bit of that with you today for our most recent live learning session. So then I connect the material to the real world. By the theory of andragogy, many students, adult learners, simply will not buy into needing to know the material until they can see an actual practical use. So I don't skip that. I make sure that's included right at the beginning. I just slide it in there before I go on with my clear, concise explanations. And if you'd like to hear more about that, I did present on this a few years ago at TLC, and it is in the recorded playlist, so you can actually hear the whole talk. But the professor-student connection trumps every other aspect of the learning experience. If there's not safety, then learning cannot exist. Imagine if I stood here and didn't share anything about myself. Would I have gotten even one reply in the chat? Well, maybe from Dan because we're friends, but not for very many. And so by having a little bit of a back and forth, that really created a wonderful learning environment. And lo and behold, when they looked at the data, Dr. Bao and the team, including our Office of Institutional Effectiveness, looked at the results, and they said, hey, if students go to live learning, they do better. They do quite a bit better. But guess how many students went to live learning when we had only optional sessions? A small percentage, not even half. once you see, as Dan's son is having the experience, once you see how math interconnects with the real world, then there's a curiosity that starts to happen about it. I wonder what about this? I wonder what about that? But if there's no connection with real world, it's like, well, why not just play, a game and not involve any sort of intellectual stuff? So some other people were doing required sessions, and I didn't know how that would work in math exactly. But there was a paper by Lowenthal et al. About synchronous learning in the online environment. So synchronous means at the same time, as I'm sure you all know. And what they found is that people did better if they attended. And they had in this paper some student quotes. He was real into calling the live sessions by different things, calling them different fun names. But what stuck with me is this one quote that I'm going to paraphrase. And the student said, I found the live sessions helpful. They were so beneficial, but I never would have attended if there hadn't been an incentive in terms of my grade. And in that session, what they did is they gave participation points. And that just stuck with me. Is there a way that I could incentivize students to attend live learning by somehow tying that in? And so that is when we decided to make required sessions. And I'll tell you specifically what we did to do that. But what in math we do is every required live learning session is tied to a graded discussion. So student doesn't get points just for attending. They have to discuss what they got. And I kind of incentivize attendance, because if you are doing the week 2, 3, or 4 discussion, depending on which math class you're taking, you discover the questions for that discussion in the live learning session. And over half the students attend in all the classes. And one of the classes, it's more than 60%. No, I think it's 2 now, or more than 60%, and one is like 57. And the other students typically do participate in that discussion because they watch that alternative live recorded session that I created. So the required sessions really make a big difference. So now I have a question for you. How many required live learning sessions do you think a student has to attend before they get those benefits we talked about? Just type it in the chat if you don't mind. Okay. See one number? 2, 1. I have done this before, probably just 1. Ooh, a lot of people think just 1. Well, apparently you know what is going on, because in order for the student to get the benefits, the student just has to attend 1 live session in a 5-week session. So if they do, the student will attend 8 points more than I changed my answer 1. Well, students may attend more than 1, because after the planned presentation, the student can ask questions. But when we had optional live learning, there were some enthusiasts that came multiple times. I got to know their kids' names. Sometimes a daughter would sit next to the person while they were working, or a son would sit next to the student. But what happens is that in the required live learning, because we do a presentation, unless the student has a specific question, many students will simply come once. And the great thing is that's all it takes. So what the Office of Institutional Effectiveness did is they paired. Yes, that's a good point. Dan makes the great point that the session would be better for the student if the student attends early. And all of our discussions that are related to it happen earlier in the class. So in week 2, or week 3, or week 4 is the latest one. But many students, once they know they're required to attend live learning, go in week 1. They go right away. And so what the Office of Institutional Effectiveness did is they matched 2 similarly prepared peers based on the past information, and then looked at what happened if a similar student then attended live learning. And the student is 1 in 5 times more likely to pass. So 1 in 5 of the students who didn't have live learning as an option weren't going, none of those were going to pass. But if they go to live learning, then 1 more of those will. So it's a really important thing to think about, that a student attending 1 session, how could that be? They've even found that there are benefits even if the student only listens to the recording, which is great. It's not as big of a benefit, but it is a good benefit. So Live learning, it turns out, delivers more points to students more likely to pass, has greater student voice, and most importantly for this conference, it increases the sense of belonging. So in the report, so here are the list of the authors of the paper that was written. It's Dr. Bao, Dr. Bethune, Dr. Pritz, Mark Hanitka, and Dr. Chris Foster all worked on that paper, and it increases that sense of belonging. And it also mentions that in the classes such as the math class, which is Math 221 and 222 initially, and Sci 207, and there's a philosophy class as well. Those three were grouped together, and those students ended up with the higher +8 points, almost a full letter grade. And one thing about the sense of belonging is they got some student comments, and they said that they appreciated seeing their peers in this live forum and they felt connected. They reported feeling like they were taking a real college course. And I think that that's really speaks to it. So if live learning delivers this increased sense of belonging, why might that be? Well, the Student Connect, I'm going to talk about the Algebra one so I can be a little bit specific here, even though we do have required live learning in 2 other math classes now. But Students connect the algebra to several applications. Students make contacts, meeting other classmates in the live learning session. Students learn how others use algebra at work, and that's not only during the live session, but one of the questions that students are asked in the week 3 discussion, either 3 or 4 discussion. No, it must be the week 4 discussion is how others use algebra at work. And when students share about that in the discussion after the live session, students learn about that as well, which really multiplies the idea that math is useful. And the presentation doesn't take the whole hour, but the professor stays for the whole hour and usually checks in a little bit early. So the student has the opportunity to ask questions and be heard. And even more important, the student gets to hear other student questions and the answers. Sometimes a student doesn't know they even want to know the answer to the question until they hear the question. So who are these students and what are their concerns? Well, I'm just going to call this student Landon. That's not the student's real name, but Landon formerly managed a coffee shop. But how does Landon feel about taking a math class? The student says, I'm shaking as I write this introduction. It's the most challenging subject I've encountered. A student that I'll call Layla talked about watching hockey with her teenager who has some special needs. Well, how does Layla feel about taking a math class? I haven't taken a math class in about 15 years. Well, that could be a concern for that student. I'm just going to go back to that last slide. And this student, who I'll call Margaret, has been wanting to take up yoga and has a dog. And another student is a reader and an athlete who plays sports. But how do these students feel about taking math? I'm scared to death of this class. Or when I did take math, it was usually my worst subject. And this student also says, my biggest concern is not having taken a math class in many, many years. Sometimes students haven't taken a math class for 15, 20, 25, 30 years. And I don't know if you're familiar with the Algebra Project, but back in a little over 20 years ago, Bob Moses started the Algebra Project. And one of the main concerns was that it was a civil rights issue that algebra wasn't offered in urban and rural communities. So this same student that was impacted way back 20 something years ago could be impacted now by taking a class which they didn't have the preparation for because of the way that the system was at that time. So once we began to have the required sessions, then there was another thing that began to happen. So how do we progress this? We started with high enrollment classes. As you might guess, a lot of people take math, and math is a required course. So there's hardly any student that doesn't take math. And a lot of the classes that Dr. Mengjin Bao and the team chose were general education classes. So it was the classes that students took right away when there might be the most need for a sense of community. Then we tracked results and we made some adjustments. Then we expanded to a larger audience. So first there was one session a week that for 2 classes that co-sat. Then there were 2 sessions a week and then 3 sessions a week. And then we were able to expand to another class and there were 2 sessions a week and then 3 sessions a week. And then all of our School of General Studies math classes had live learning and all of them had 3 to 4 sessions a week. We held those multiple weekly sessions and I created the materials like the recorded alternative session, and I could use that then to train presenters because I can't present 10 or 11 sessions every week. But with the leverage of the other wonderful math associate professors here at UAGC, we can. Then we required live learning. We tied to a course learning outcome. That means we can track and see in the same course, are students doing better on that CLO and connected to the graded assignment. And I've already explained how that worked. So the 3 C's method is imperative because, as Maya Angelou said, people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did. They will never forget how you made them feel. So that beginning where I am connecting with the student, it really makes a difference. And I'd like to just give you an idea of what a sample live learning calendar might look like. So here, this is for our algebra class. And if the student clicks here to view the previous recording, this is a little bit of what that student will see.
In the first 2, which are suspension bridges, the parabola opens up between the vertical supports. In the Holm arch bridge, the parabola opens down. It's in the shape of a parabola.
Remember, the subject here is real life uses of parabolas.
In the US, we can think about the oculus in the World Trade Center. This work of art has been described by the architect Santiago Calatrava as creating the oculus to resemble a bird taking flight from a child's hand. But how did that actually come about? The artistry was based on mathematics, and the way the building was designed was established using parabolic mathematical equations. This was created using parabolas.
There's a lot more of that, but we only have so many more minutes left. So the student experiences this, and in the live session, the associate professor or myself or Dr. Lane Andrew presents from that same PowerPoint, and that student will see the part where the parabola is drawn in. It's in an interactive slide, and the other presenters can use that as well. So this gives students a choice about when to attend. Now, if you're a good professor, you're trying to think about pain points for the student. And one of the things that I thought about is, well, what will students who are in live learning get stuck on? So in the 2 other classes, the introductory statistics and a sort of a math and everyday life class, it's called quantitative explorations of mathematics in everyday life or something like that. In both of those, students are learning about ways that statistics are inaccurate and how to identify that. In fact, in the Math 232 class, the statistics one, the students are asked to identify a graph that is distorted and then discuss that in the week 2 discussion. So to prepare students for success, I thought, well, if I were doing this for the first time and I didn't know anything about statistics and I was scared of taking this class, then I might really be able to use the assistance of our wonderful and talented librarians, Anna Uribe and Allison McDermott. They are giving a talk later this TLC if you are interested. And what I did is I worked with them partnering to come up with library quick answers that would talk about whether a graph is misleading or distorted, how you can find statistical charts. And again, we can just click over to that quickly. So here is one of the ones that we worked on. You can see that it gives the graph. It cites a source. It tells you a few reasons that this graph is vague. It's very specific and easy to read. You notice that didn't take an hour to look through. And there's another one, how can I find statistical graphs and charts in the library? Students might have a pain point there. And then there's a third one, but again, we only have so much time. So partnering with other people on the team allows me to provide students that help and assistance right in that moment that the student might be struggling. They don't have to reach out and ask the professor. It's right there in the prompt in the discussion. So the student might be before live learning going, I don't know where to start. I'm scared of this. Haven't had this in a long time. Students sometimes write in the early discussion, math hates me. I'm totally alone. And the student might wonder if they're smart enough and then think, when am I going to have the time to finish this? And then think, maybe I can't do this and get discouraged. But the student gets to live learning They meet a live professor, the person connects with them. The student receives support. The student receives direction in the live learning session, gets their questions answered. All of a sudden, the student is having a different experience. The student does know where to start. The student might be thinking, this isn't too much for me. I'm supported in this. Maybe I am smart enough. And like me with biology, who challenged myself to earn an A or a B in biology in college because I wasn't going to let my lack of interest in the phylum of a frog interfere with me graduating and becoming a professor, which is what I wanted to do. The student might challenge themselves to find the time to finish this and think, maybe I can learn this. I'll do this. And that is really what happens when we do the live learning. And I'll just give you a little bit more about the required sessions. Remember, we always tie that to a course learning outcome. We don't give information that students don't need to learn to succeed in the class. So it's connected to a graded assignment. We don't assume everyone can come on Thursday when we had that one session. We offer multiple weekly sessions and an ADA compliant recorded alternative session. Those are really key critical components to this being a successful experience. So I'm going to look in the chat, which I had to turn on. Oh, excellent. Okay, well, I'm going to just ask if there are any questions and pause for a moment. If you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat.
Do you have a relationship with the tutoring and library center as far as like when they take this course and they have students reaching for tutoring, are you able to collect that data to maybe enhance the course structure to improve learning outcomes?
Yes, we are. Absolutely. I have a wonderful working relationship with the librarians. And for the tutoring sessions, if a student has a challenge with that, I know that we have looked into it over the years and made some shifts in how exactly that's handled. I think the university even changed tutoring providers at one point. But for example, if my student June says, hey, I had a trouble with the tutor, I literally can go in and see everything that happened in that session. Absolutely. A lot of times, though, what we try to do is to incorporate the success material. I'm going to stop sharing so I can see everyone a little better. What we do is we incorporate that into the course material. So, for example, we had new Constellation textbooks made for 2 of the 3 classes, and the third one will be done in January. We're just about to begin that revision next month. And in the textbook, there are video tutorials throughout the multimedia text. So when the student takes a homework or a quiz, well, for the homework, it's sort of you can take it lots of times. The student can literally go, I'm stuck on number 4, click right here to get to that short video made by the textbook author. So the videos are within the text, the videos are within the homework, and then the quiz, the student doesn't have the link to the video right in the quiz. That's where we're kind of trying to see if the student learned the material, but the homework is interactive. And before that, there's a learning lab where students also get the chance to, if you just finish the learning lab, you earn points for it. So the student has the textbook with the videos, then a no stakes, then a low stakes, and then after that, the student takes the quiz. But I feel like that's even more powerful than the tutoring, because the help that we predict students need, it's right there. And a video is so powerful because it can be watched multiple times. The student doesn't have to say, oh, let me ask Professor Ourso that question again because I don't know what she meant, or I couldn't follow it, or I started thinking about something else. The student can watch the video until it makes sense. And I always offer in the announcements, I take requests. If one of the videos doesn't make sense, I'll make you a new one. And in Math 222, I've gotten 0 requests so far. We did a walkthrough video and a video to help students enter answers into the quizzes the way that they need to be entered to get credit. But the students are not challenged with that. The students are finding the help adequate. That's a great question. Thanks for asking that.
Thank you
Okay,
so much for
I
sharing.
know we need to wrap up.
I know.
If you have questions, just send me a note. I'll put my email in the chat.
Yes. So thank you everyone for coming. Thank you, Professor Ourso. Please use the link in the chat to nominate TLC presentations for conference awards and share your feedback. And we hope to see you at more sessions.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Nice to meet everyone.